Dear viewers, welcome to this session on Who is Consumer under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. This topic pertains to one of the program which is offered by School of Law IGNOU, that is Certificate in Consumer Protection, which is a 6 months program and is offered by School of Law in every January and June session, which is a 6 months program. However, the learner can complete this program within the span of 2 years. In everyday, if we look into the everyday transactions, we all are consumers. We are all, by definition, we can say we are consumers who purchases the products, goods or services for our daily needs. Consumer, we can say, being the largest economic group in the economy, and it has great impact on the economic consumption or economic decisions which is made by the public or private sectors. We can say that in any country, the consumer expenditure makes up to 2/3 of the economy's total consumption. So in any way, we all are consumer in one or the another way. Either we are purchasing the things online or offline. So when we talk about the definition of consumer, it also includes within it e-consumers. That is those who are purchasing through online or through virtual media. The Consumer Protection Act, which is initially when it came into force in 1986, now it is replaced by the new Consumer Protection Act 2019, which came into force in 2020. It is, we can say, it's a historical milestone of the consumer movement in the country, and it provides for the promotion and protection of consumer rights. It provides for mechanisms to protect the interest of the consumer against the against the violation of their consumer rights or against the unfair dealings or unfair trade practices or any other forms of violations which a consumer may suffer, maybe adulteration or maybe higher prices or lack of good quality of material. So to deal with all these problems, the Consumer Protection Act was passed, which protect the interest of the consumers, and the scheme which is basically adopted in the act is not a disciplinary approach, but it is a compensatory approach where the consumer has suffered any harm, so they can claim for damages or they will get compensation for the goods or services. This Consumer Protection Act basically provides for speedy and we can say inexpensive adjudication. So it is very important to understand who falls within the purview of the definition of consumer, which is provided under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. So today we will be discussing who is consumer under the act and who does not fall within the definition of consumer. If we look into the section 27 of the new Consumer Protection Act, it defines consumer. So it says any person who buys any goods or for a consideration which has been paid or promised or partly paid or partly promised or under any system of deferred payment is there, or it also includes any such user of such goods other than the person who buys such goods or consideration paid or promised or partly paid consideration or partly paid promised or under any system of deferred payment. So such views, however, should be made with the approval of such person, but does not include a person who obtains such goods for resale or for any commercial purposes. So there are two categories of consumer. One is who is purchasing the goods for consideration, and another is who hires or avail the services. So it is applicable to both goods and services. So one is the buying of goods. Then another provision is who is hiring the services or availing any services. Again, the service should be for the consideration, and that consideration can be paid either it should be paid before, or it could be partly paid or a partly promised, or it could be under any system of deferred payment mechanism that can be followed. So it also includes the beneficiary who is using the services hired with the approval of the person who has actually hired the services. But again, it does not include the persons who avail such services for any commercial purposes. Now there are two things which needs to be understand here. One is when any person is buying goods or services, we are saying. So it means, for example, if A buy a refrigerator from B for the money, which is consideration here. That means A is a consumer here because he is purchasing money. He is purchasing the refrigerator for the money. Now, in another example, for example, in a case where a person buys a car and there was a condition, there was an offer by a dealer that any person who will be buying car of this brand, of this value, can enter into some lottery system. And if they won, they will get the tickets for going out of India. Now the person purchased the car and entered into the lottery and he won. But he did not receive the tickets. So it was held by the court that he is not the consumer, because here he has paid the consideration for the car, not for the tickets, and that was just an offer by the dealer. So in that case, he is not the consumer for claiming compensation for not receiving the tickets. Similarly, it's not only the person who is purchasing the goods is a consumer, but any person who, with the approval of that person, uses the goods. Now it generally happens when in any household, when we purchase some good, it is used by the other members also, but it is with the approval of the person who has purchased that good or hired that services. So that also falls within the purview of the consumer. For example, A purchased a scooter and it was used by his son B. He took the scooter, and on the way the scooter was not working properly, so he went to the to the dealer to get it rectified, but there was some defect in the scooter. So that person B, the son of the A, he sued the person from whom they have purchased the scooter. So in this case, it was argued that he is not the consumer, because he has not purchased the scooter. But the court held no, he falls within the definition of consumer, because the goods is purchased by a person, and he is using that good with the approval of that particular person. So he falls within the definition of consumer. Then there is one explanation to it, which says that the consumers, it should not be for the commercial purposes. A person is a consumer when he is buying goods or services, but he is not using it for the profit. But at the same time, if the person is consuming certain goods for earning his livelihood or by means of self-employed, then that person falls within the definition of the consumer. For example, if A purchases a sewing machine and that is just only for the purpose of earning the livelihood, that person can fall within the definition of consumer if there is any defect in the sewing machine. But if a person purchases a jeep and he is using that jeep for a purpose of taxi, that means he is using that jeep for earning a profit, then that does not fall within the definition of consumer, because here the person is earning profit and it is used for commercial purposes. So when the goods or services are used for commercial purposes, then it will not fall within the definition of person or a consumer. Now the term person is also very wide. When we say any person is a consumer, so again, who are those persons? What does the expression person include within it? So we can say that the expression person, it includes an individual, a firm, whether registered or not. So it is not mandatory that a firm has to be registered to claim or to file a case as a consumer. A Hindu undivided family, then a cooperative society, it can also be a consumer, an association of a person, whether registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860 or not, any corporation, company or a body of individuals, whether incorporated or not, any artificial juridical person, if not falling within the any of the preceding subclauses. So that is also falls within the term person. So term person is quite elaborative, and it could be any individual itself, or a corporate company, or a Hindu undivided family, or any association, whether it is registered or not. Now, commercial purpose, we have little bit also discussed before. When we talk about the expression commercial purpose, it does not include use by a person of goods bought and used by him exclusively for the purpose of earning his livelihood by means of self-employed. So we can say the free goods and services. If a person is getting some goods or services free and there is no charge for it, then that services are excluded under the scope of the Consumer Protection Act. So commercial purposes, when we define it, is just to earn the profit. If the person is earning the profit out of that service or out of purchasing that good, then it falls under the commercial purposes. But if it is exclusively for earning the livelihood or by means of self-employed, then it is not the commercial purpose. For example, here, one of the person who is an ophthalmologist, he purchased some machinery for the purpose of putting it in his clinic. That machinery got some defect. So he sued that the manufacturer. The manufacturer claimed that he is not a consumer because he is using it for commercial purpose. No, in this case, the court, the forum said, no, here the person is not having a big hospital, or he is just having a small clinic, and he is using that machine for the purpose as a self-employed person. So there is no commercial purpose. It is for to earn the livelihood. So that person falls within the definition of consumer. Then we are saying that a consumer is a person who purchases goods or services. So what type of goods could be included in the definition, or what type of services we are referring to here? So when we talk about goods, so goods is every kind of movable property. And it also includes food as defined under the Food Safety and Standards Act 2006. So when we are saying movable property, that means except the money, it could be shares, it could be, what you say, growing crop, that could also be, or a shares or a stocks, that could fall within the definition of goods, and also the food. Then comes the term service. Now when we are saying service, the term service here means service of any description, which is made available to potential users and includes maybe it's a banking services, it's financing, it's housing, construction, insurance, or entertainment, transport, supply of electrical and other energy, boarding, lodging, amusement, etc. So it covers wide variety of services under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, e-commerce also needs to be defined a little bit here, because it means buying or selling of goods and services, which may include the digital products also, over digital or electronic networks. So even the goods could be digital goods, and if they are purchased virtually through the virtual mass, through online transactions or various means of online, maybe direct selling or multi-selling, we say direct or telecom services. So they all fall within the definition of services. So far, if we look into we were defining how, goods and services, if a person is purchasing, he is a consumer, he or she is a consumer. The consumers also have certain rights. However, before that, I would like to discuss few services which can come under the purview of the Consumer Protection Act. For example, like the corporate bodies, we were talking who is the person. So we are saying the corporate bodies, they can also be sued under the Consumer Protection Act. Then the question always arose whether the term person can be extended to include the corporate body. This case, there is one of the matter which came in the case of Karnataka Power Transmission versus Ashok Iron Works Limited, which was 2009 Supreme Court case where it was held, yes, corporate bodies, they can fall within the definition of persons under the Consumer Protection Act. So then there are many other, the same position was also reiterated in one of the case was Southern Petrochemical Industries. In that case also, it was held that the word supply, though it is not same as sale, and in the context of electricity, it would be the provisions of services which is applicable as under the Consumer Protection Act. Now, professional services. Now, professional services also fall within the purview of the scope of this act. Now, professional services could be, of the services which is by, maybe the lawyers, chartered accountants, or doctors. So, how we can say that it is falls within the definition of consumer, or how these services, whether they will fall under, they had the protection of Consumer Protection Act or not. So we says now, and there are many cases pertaining to that. For example, one of the cases Indian Medical Association versus VP Shanta and others. In this case, the court decided about the deficiency of medical services. If there is a deficiency in providing the medical services, whether it will fall under the CPA or not. So in this case, the court held that the services which is rendered by medical professionals fall within the ambit of services under the relevant section of the Act. It also rejected the contention. What was the contention raised? Contention raised was that the medical practitioner, he is being a professional, and it can fall under the Indian Medical Council Act, because there is an Indian Medical Council Act is also there. So it should be excluded from the provisions of CPA. But it was held that the provisions for, if there is a provision that you are a person taking token fee for any administrative purposes, and it would not include otherwise as a free service. If there are certain services which were not charged and they were free services for all, then it will not fall under the Consumer Protection Act. But if the services are not free, they are not free of cost, but they are providing services, it will fall under the Consumer Protection Act, or within the definition or within the ambit of the services provided under the Act. So also the cost of services, if paid by the employer or the insurance company, or also would be deemed similar to paying for the services by the consumer itself. So all type of professional services, even the medical services, if not rendered free of cost, will fall under the purview of the Consumer Protection Act. Then there are many cases pertaining to this, or even if we look into the consumer rights, because basically aim of the Consumer Protection Act is to provide relief to the consumer, to protect their interest, and to provide them remedies by way of compensation. So there are certain consumer rights like right to safety, right to be heard, right to seek redress, right to be informed, right to choose, right to consumer education. So when we say right to safety, that means all the products which have been sold, the goods or services which is provided, they should be safe and should not be dangerous to the life of public or a person who is consuming it. Then again is right to be heard. If a person wants to file a complaint against any good purchased, or there is a defect in the services, then the person should have right to complain to the competent authority. So that is the right which is also specifically provided under the Consumer Protection Act. Then is right to seek redress. When we say right to seek redress, that means if a person has suffered any harm, or if there is any violation of their consumer right, or the person has suffered unfair trade practice, or there is an unfair contractual terms which is unfair to the consumer, so person can seek redressal from the different forums which is provided under the Consumer Protection Act, and they can seek remedy for their grievances. Then is right to be informed. So every consumer has also right that he or she should be informed. When we talk about labels, so you generally see that in every food products they have labels. So which provides for, the content which is within the package, or which provides for expiry dates and all other information. So if the consumer has right to be informed that what are the contents of the things he or she is purchasing, or what would be the term of expiry or usage, how the things has to be used, so they can exercise their right to be informed. Then right to choose, that's the natural right. Every consumer has a right. There are a variety of products available in the market, and they have right to choose the product which is better suitable to them, or which they feel is better services is provided by the service provider. So they have right to choose. And right to consumer education. This right to consumer education is also very important, because one should know and they should be aware of their consumer rights. They should be aware of what are the punishments, or what is the compensation, or what is the law relevant to consumers when it comes to, when they are suffering any type of harm, or a good is not up to the quality, or the services deficiencies in services for which they have suffered harm. So how they can recourse to the legal action. So they should be aware of their rights, and also how to seek the remedies. So Consumer Protection Act provides for the 3-tier mechanism also for protecting those consumer rights. Let us briefly look into that. Before that, we can also say that this new act, which is Consumer Protection Act, also provides for certain additional rights to the individuals, or we can say consumers. For example, now with the passage of, with the development of economy, and with the usage of online transactions and online digital media, they have right to file complaint anywhere from. They can file from anywhere. So it's not, earlier it was there, like where the cause of action arose, then consumer has to file a complaint there. But now they have right to file complaint from anywhere. Right to protect consumer as a class. Now it's not only a single consumer can file a case, but as a class they can also be represented. Right to know why a complaint is rejected. If by any reason, if the complaint is rejected, they have all the rights to know what is the grounds for rejection of that particular complaint. Then they can also, because we are saying now e-filing is there, the complaints can be filed online, electronically also. So they have right to seek the hearing through video conferencing. That is also an additional, we can say, is provided by this new act. And also right to seek compensation under the product liability. Earlier only the manufacturer was liable, but now under the new act, the person who is endorsing the product and the product is not up to a mark, that endorser has also duty to take due care when they are advertising any product. So the liability is also now casted on the endorser as well as the manufacturer if there is any deficiency in the services or defect in a good. Then this Consumer Protection Act, it provides for 3 trial redressal mechanism. There are District Commission, State Commission, National Commission, Central Protection Councils, we can say CPCs, or then also there is one more now has been added as a regulator, which is the Central Consumer Protection Authority, CCPA. So in all the it is 3-tier we are saying, because at the district level, at that there also the complaint can be filed, then at the state level, then at the national level, because it has a different jurisdiction, like up to district commission. Earlier it was very less, earlier it was 20,000, but now it was extended to even 1 crore. And then though with the rules have come, less 50,000, if it's 50 lakh, then also the district commission look into those complaints. Then state commission above the 1 crore, and then national commission which is above the 10 crore of jurisdiction above the matter, which is having the amount of more than 10 crore. So Central Protection Councils have also very important role to play, and they have to promote and they have to work for promotion of the consumer rights, and also to protect the consumer rights and to provide the advice to the various consumer forums. The Consumer Protection Authority which has been appointed now as a regulator, it has been given certain powers. So Central Consumer Protection Authority, it can also take certain actions suo moto, conduct the inquiries, and also advise the forums for how to protect the interest of the consumers, how they should look into that the consumer should not suffer any violation of their rights or should not suffer any unfair trade practices. So they can take the proactive mechanism or action suo moto. If we so far we have discussed how who is the consumer and how what is the mechanism which is available under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. Though if we look into, there are so many there are so many case laws on how who is consumer or who is not the consumer, but overall we can say, like, in day-to-day working, we all are consumers though, but if we have to take the remedy under the Consumer Protection Act, so the consumer is here is any person who purchases goods or services for his own use or for the purpose of his self employment or for earning the livelihood or hire services, falls within the definition of consumer. And any person who on behalf of those persons who have purchased the good or services, with the approval of that particular person, uses the goods or uses the services, also fall within the ambit of the term consumer, and they can sue for their rights in the different forums which is provided by the Act. However, it depends upon the jurisdiction, the pecuniary jurisdiction of that particular commission or particular forum. But now we can say, but the main thing is consideration here. Consideration is nowhere defined in the Act, but we can say as it could be as per the Indian Contract Act. So consideration could be money. When a person is purchasing goods, it could be for the money, or it could be a promise also, or it could be sometimes the money consideration could be paid partly or could be partly promised, or it could also follow any system where a deferred system of payment is allowed. Where deferred system of payment is allowed, that approach can also be valid, but the transaction should be for the consideration. If there is no consideration, that would become the illegal transaction or contract. So every transaction should be for the consideration only to fall within the scope of the Consumer Protection Act. So we can conclude this by saying that the definition of consumer also now covers, telecom or a housing construction. If you look into, now RERA has come. So in one of the new case, Imperia Structure Limited, in 2020, the court says no, they still fall within the ambit of Consumer Protection Act also, though RERA is there. So the expression goods, buy any goods or hires or avail any services, now we can say it includes all modes of transaction, whether it is an offline or online, through electronic means, or by teleshopping, or by direct selling or multi-level marketing, but it should be for the consideration. So the consideration, we have already said, it is not defined under the Consumer Protection Act, but now it can be construed according to the Indian Contract Act. So with this, thank you very much.